The day we buried my father, the air was thick with lilies and unspoken greed. Everyone wore black, but I could already see the calculations behind their eyes. Then, right there in the living room, still heavy with the scent of the funeral wreaths, my brother-in-law Ryan Carter leaned back in Dad's leather armchair like he owned it and announced with a lazy smirk, "All 5 million and the stocks go to Lauren. She's the oldest. That's only fair." My sister Lauren, 52 and still dressing like she was 25, laughed that high, brittle laugh I'd hated since childhood and squeezed his arm. Finally, she whispered loud enough for the whole room to hear, "We're set for life, baby." I stood by the window holding my wife Claire's hand, feeling our 2 children pressed close against us. And I didn't say a word, not yet the lawyer. A quiet man with silver hair and tired eyes cleared his throat. "Actually, no, that's not how this works." Ryan's grin faltered. Lauren's painted nails dug into his forearm. The lawyer looked straight at my sister. "Lauren, you are not entitled to any portion of the estate." You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. Lauren's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Excuse me?" Ryan half rose from the chair. "She's the oldest daughter. That's the law, isn't it?" The lawyer's voice stayed soft, almost gentle. "Lauren is not Richard Harper's biological child, and she was never legally adopted." I watched the color drain from my sister's face the way water drains from a cracked glass. Sudden, total, unstoppable. Her eyes flew to our mother. Mom stood by the fireplace, 76 years old, small and suddenly ancient, her lips pressed so tightly together they disappeared. Lauren's voice cracked. "Mom, Mom." Mom's answer was barely a breath. "You were from my first marriage, sweetheart. Your father. He wanted to adopt you. He really did. But then, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. We all knew the rest. I'd known since I was 14. Dad had sat me down one night, voice thick with whiskey and regret, and told me the truth. He'd planned to adopt Lauren, make it official, give her his name in every way that mattered. But year after year she lied, she stole. She broke my mother's heart with one reckless choice after another by the time she brought Ryan home. Younger, handsome in that cheap way. Dad had quietly removed her from the will and never told a soul except me. Lauren started shaking. "You're lying." Dad would never. Ryan's face had gone ugly with panic. "We spent money on the wedding, the honeymoon, everything. On the promise of what, exactly?" I asked, speaking for the first time. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. He glared at me like it was something stuck to his shoe. The lawyer laid the will on the coffee table. Dad's handwriting? Steady even at 81, filled page after page, everything. The company's shares, the cash, the house. Split between Mom and me. A single line about Lauren. I loved her as my own, but love is not inheritance. She has chosen her path. Lauren lunged for the papers. Ryan caught her wrist, hissing, "We'll contest this. Blood or not, she grew up here." The lawyer smiled without warmth. "You're welcome to try. The estate is ironclad." I remember the silence that followed, thick and electric. The kind that comes right before lightning. That night I couldn't sleep. Claire lay beside me, breathing softly. And I stared at the ceiling, listening to our children down the hall. I thought about Dad on the golf course, clutching his chest under a perfect blue sky. I thought about the way Lauren used to sneer that I was the golden child, never understanding that being loved came with expectations. And I felt something dark settle in my chest, something patient and cold. 6 months later, the money was ours. Clean and legal. Mom dated Lauren a check anyway. Small, almost insulting. Because a mother's heart is a foolish that way. Lauren cashed it the same day and vanished with Ryan. Relatives whispered. Phones stopped ringing. Life moved on. Then one ordinary Tuesday evening, I took Mom, Claire, and our little girl Lily out for pasta. Lily, 7 years old and all gap-toothed smiles, made Mom laugh for the first time since the funeral. Driving home, windows down, Spring air suite, I said. Mom, move in with us, please. The house is too big, too quiet. She hesitated. Lauren still has a key. She only visits when she needs something. I reached across and squeezed her thin fingers. Then we'll change the locks. We pulled into the driveway of the family home to drop her off. The lights were on. Every light in the house blazed against the dusk. Though the cleaner wasn't due until Friday, my stomach tightened. I parked in the garage. Let's have a quick coffee before you settle in, I said. Keeping my voice light for Lily's sake, we stepped out of the car. Headlights flared behind us. Blinding! Sudden Dodden engine roared. Tires screamed on concrete. The car shot forward, straight at us. I heard Lily scream. Claire's hand ripped from mine. I threw myself sideways, arms around my wife and daughter, the world tilting violently. Metal grazed my hip, spun me like a rag doll. I hit the flower bed hard, breath exploding from my lungs. Pain blooming white-hot down my side. The car slammed into the garage, pillar and stopped. For a second, everything was silent except the hiss of a dying engine. Then Claire's voice, frantic. Ethan. Ethan. I rolled over, tasting dirt and blood. Behind the cracked windscreen, Rian Carter stared back at me, eyes wide, mouth open in a perfect O of shock. He hadn't expected us to survive. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. I lay propped against white pillows, ribs taped, hip bruised purple, staring at the ceiling while Claire slept curled in the vinyl chair. Lily's small hand tucked into hers. Mom sat beside the bed, holding my other hand like she was 16 again and had the flu. Her fingers trembled. None of us spoke about what we all knew. Ryan had meant to kill me. He told the police it was an accident. Foot slipped. Accelerator instead of brake. I smiled when the detective repeated the story. I'd seen Ryan drive. I'd seen the way his eyes flicked to the rear view mirror when he thought no one was watching. Accident. My ass. 2 days later, Lauren walked in alone. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though the corridor lights were dim. The way people do when they've been crying or don't want to be recognized. She stopped at the foot of my bed. You're surprisingly resilient. Little brother, she said, voice flat. I let the silence stretch until it hurt. Disappointed? I asked. She flinched. Just a flicker, then looked away. I told her what Mom had decided while I was still unconscious. She was waiving her half of the inheritance. All of it would come to me. Then to Claire and the children, I'd already had the papers drawn up, signed. Witness Lauren's sunglasses slipped down her nose. Behind them, her eyes were red, wild. But there's 5 million, she whispered, like the number itself could save her. Not for you, I said gently. Never for you. Something inside her snapped. She grabbed the front of my hospital gown, knuckles white. Give me half. I'm your sister. Her breath was sour with panic and cheap wine. I looked straight into her eyes. You stopped being my sister the day you decided. Dad's love had a price tag. She screamed then. Raw and animal, fingers clawing for my throat. Nurses burst in. Mom stood frozen in the doorway, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Where did I go wrong with you? She asked, voice breaking. Lauren didn't answer. She was too busy being dragged away after that. Mom came home with us. We turned the guest room into hers. Soft blues and the lavender sachet she loved. For a while she rallied, laughing at Lily's school plays. Burning toast the way only grandmothers can get away with. Then Lauren and Ryan moved back into the family house, claiming they would take care of her. I was at work when the call came. Mom was in the ICU. Wrong. Dosage of heart medication. Too much by a factor of 10. I ran every red light getting there. Nam looked tiny in the bed, tubes in her arms. Skin almost translucent. Claire stayed with her while I drove to the house. It was a wreck. Dirty dishes piled in the sink. Laundry rotting in the washer, fridge empty except for half a bottle of vodka. The safe where Mom kept her bank card was open. The card gone. $70,000-$8,000. missing from her daily account. The inheritance remained untouched in the bank vault. Thank God. But everything she needed to live had been bled dry. I sat on her bed and put my head in my hands. When I looked up, I saw the pill organizer on the nightstand. One compartment had been tampered with. The foil backing carefully peeled and resealed. I took it with me back to the hospital. Mom's eyes filled when I showed her. It was Ryan, she whispered. He said it would help me sleep. She closed her eyes. I'm so tired, Ethan. She never woke up again. We buried her beside Dad on a gray morning that felt like the sky itself was grieving. The house had already been stripped. Jewellery. Silver, paintings, even the antique clock Dad wound every Sunday. Gone. I stood in the empty living room and felt something ancient and cold settle in my bones. Not sorrow anymore, purpose. Week later, Lauren and Ryan sat across from me in the lawyer's office. Smug, thinking Mom's death had changed everything, Lauren. Wore new highlights and a diamond on her right hand that definitely hadn't been there before. Ryan drummed his fingers on the table like a man who already knew he'd won. The lawyer opened the file. Eleanor Harper's estate passes in its entirety to her son, Ethan Harper. Lauren Carter is expressly excluded. Lauren laughed, high and brittle. That's impossible. I'm her real daughter. The lawyer slid the DNA report across the table anyway. We'd had it done years ago. Quietly, at Dad's request. It was conclusive. Ryan swept a stack of folders to the floor. This is fraud. Give us the money. I leaned forward. Tell me, Ryan, how does it feel to kill two people and still end up with nothing? His face went the color of old ash. Lauren grabbed his sleeve. Shut up, you idiot, but he was already unraveling. If it wasn't for him, he snarled, jerking his chin at me, we'd have had the lot by now. New car, new house. He stopped too late. The lawyer pressed a button on the desk. Phone recording has been active since you've both arrived, he said. Quietly, Ryan lunged. Security had him face down on the carpet in seconds. Lauren just sat there, mouth open. Mascara running black rivers down her cheeks that suddenly looked every one of her 52 years. They arrested Ryan that afternoon. Attempted murder, theft, fraud, the medication tampering. Previous warrants he thought were buried. Lauren took a plea as accomplice. 18 months when she begged relatives for a place to stay after release. Every door stayed locked. Some wounds even blood can't heal. I never touched the $5 million for myself. I set up trusts for my children, scholarships in my parents' names, a foundation for elders abused by their own. Claire and I still live in the same house. Lily and our son growing faster than should be legal. Some evenings, sit on the porch with a glass of red and watch the sun go down over the same hills Dad loved. The money is there, quiet and safe, like a promise kept. And sometimes, when the wind moves through the trees just right, I swear I hear my father's voice, low and proud. You did good. Son, you did good. If greed ever whispers in your ear, remember Lauren and Ryan. Love isn't measured in zeros on a bank statement. It's measured in the people who stay when the account is empty. Cherish them, protect them. Because some debts can never be repaid with money, only with a lifetime of showing up.